Hi, this is Julia from Avatar Academy. Let me start with something honest. If you are listening to this and you already understand English fairly well, but you still feel stuck, bored, or tired of studying, then this episode is for you. Because the truth is, most people don't fail at English because they are lazy or unintelligent. They fail because they are using methods that fight against how the brain actually learns. Many learners reach a point where grammar books feel repetitive, vocabulary lists feel endless, and traditional study routines feel heavy. At that stage, the problem is not effort. The problem is cognitive overload. Your brain is exhausted from conscious learning, and it starts resisting. You sit down to study, but your attention drifts. You open a lesson, but your motivation drops. And slowly, without realizing it, learning becomes associated with pressure instead of progress. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Language fluency is not built through constant concentration. It is built through internalization. And internalization happens when learning feels natural, meaningful, and emotionally connected to real life. Think about how you learned your first language. You didn't memorize rules. You didn't analyze sentence structures. You absorbed patterns through repetition, context, and exposure. The brain is designed to detect meaning, not grammar charts. When we force it into an academic mode for too long, especially at an intermediate level, we slow down progress instead of accelerating it. At the B1-B2 stage, your biggest enemy is boredom. Boredom is not harmless. Neurological studies show that when the brain is bored, attention drops sharply, memory retention decreases, and information fails to transfer into long-term storage. In simple words, if learning feels dull, it doesn't stick. That's why improving your English without boring study is not a shortcut. It's actually the most efficient path forward. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is moving from active studying to active living in English. There is a difference. Active studying requires constant effort and focus. Active living creates automaticity. Automaticity is the stage where language starts coming out of you without conscious translation. This is where fluency begins. But how do you reach that stage? First, you need to reduce mental resistance. Mental resistance happens when the brain associates English with pressure, evaluation, or failure. Every time you test yourself aggressively, you reinforce anxiety. Instead, your brain needs safe repetition. This means listening, reading, and thinking in English without judging yourself. For example, listening to long-form content like podcasts is powerful, not because you understand every word, but because your brain starts recognizing rhythm, structure, and tone. Even when you don't fully understand something, your subconscious is still working. This is called passive exposure, and it plays a massive role in language development. However, passive exposure alone is not enough. It needs to be combined with light engagement. That means reacting mentally, agreeing, disagreeing, predicting what comes next, or emotionally connecting to the content. When emotion is involved, memory strengthens. Neuroscience confirms that emotionally charged information is remembered far more effectively than neutral data. This is why stories work better than lessons. Stories create context. Context reduces cognitive load. When your brain understands the situation, it doesn't need to translate every word. It guesses meaning naturally. And guess what? That's exactly what fluent speakers do. Another critical point is vocabulary depth, not vocabulary size. Many learners obsess over learning more words, But fluency depends on how well you know the words you already have. A B2 speaker doesn't necessarily know more words than a B1 speaker. They know how to use them flexibly. They understand nuance. They know when a word sounds formal, informal, emotional, or neutral. Instead of memorizing isolated words, you need to see them repeatedly in different contexts. This creates semantic networks in the brain. A word stops being a translation and becomes a concept. When that happens, recall becomes automatic. Also, let's talk about mistakes. At this level, fear of mistakes becomes subtle but dangerous. You might not be afraid of basic grammar errors anymore, but you hesitate because you want to sound right. This hesitation kills fluency. Studies on second language acquisition show that learners who speak with errors improve faster than learners who wait for perfection. Fluency grows through momentum, not accuracy. Another overlooked factor is identity. Language is not just a skill, it's a version of you. When you speak English, you are not just using words, you are expressing a personality. Many learners feel uncomfortable because they haven't accepted that their English personality is different from their native one. Once you allow yourself to exist imperfectly in English, confidence increases naturally. Now, let's talk about routine. Improving without boring study requires consistency, not intensity. 10 minutes daily of meaningful exposure beats 2 hours once a week of forced studying. The brain loves patterns. When English becomes part of your daily rhythm, it stops feeling like work and starts feeling normal. This could mean listening while walking, thinking in English while planning your day, or describing situations silently in your head. These micro-habits reduce pressure and increase retention. Over time, they create linguistic intuition. Intuition is what allows fluent speakers to feel what sounds right, even if they can't explain why. Another powerful technique is delayed correction. Instead of correcting yourself instantly while speaking, let the sentence finish. Immediate correction interrupts flow and increases anxiety. Delayed correction allows communication to continue. Fluency grows when flow is protected. Also, don't underestimate the power of repetition. Re-listening to the same content is not boring, it's strategic. Each repetition strengthens neural pathways. The first time you listen, you focus on meaning. The second time, you notice structure. The third time, vocabulary becomes clearer. This layered understanding is how mastery develops. And finally, motivation. Motivation does not come from discipline alone. It comes from visible progress. When you choose methods that feel lighter, progress feels faster. And when progress feels faster, motivation sustains itself. So if you want to improve your English without boring study, stop fighting your brain. Work with it. Reduce pressure. Increase exposure. Choose content that challenges you slightly but doesn't overwhelm you. Allow mistakes. Trust repetition. And most importantly, let English become part of your life, not a task you need to survive. That is how real improvement happens at the B1-B2 level. Quietly, naturally, powerfully. And before you leave, make sure you join our Telegram group to download the worksheet for this episode and practice the key vocabulary in context. You'll also find daily exercises there to reinforce what you've just listened to. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. The link is in the description for more daily English content that actually helps you move forward. This is Julia from Avatar Academy. Keep going.